Okay, we're going to start this process by tinning some leads and putting them onto the limit switch for this assembly here. And when you tin the lead, you're taking some pure copper wire and you're adding a little bit of solder to the tip of it. Here you can see the copper color. And what that will do is allow the wire then to be soldered easier when you get ready to assemble it. And I'll show you how that works if I can figure this out. Okay, hold on. Once it gets warm, it sort of just adheres to the copper. So you can see there we have a nice tinned finish, and that will all wrap around all the wires and bond them together so they don't fray. The other thing it will do is allow us to go into our switch. When we get ready to do that and we're mounting the switches, it will stick to them a little better. I won't have to apply as much heat to the switch. So that'll speed up the process for a couple of reasons. Now I've got to do some other preparations, and I'll be right back. One of the other things that I need to do with my switch here is when I compress the switch and I go to full state, the lever sticks down just the tiniest bit. So I'm going to have to make some adjustments, either bending the lead or cutting it or doing a little bit of something so that it doesn't stick down below. Okay, so now I've got the position. I've bent my little wire the way I wanted to. I'm going to try to solder this in, and it's just a touch. You don't want to overheat any of the components, so you're just going to put a touch in there. I got to take my glasses off. I got to need to see this. I got to get right down in here, and I hope I'm not blocking any of the light. But I'm going to put a little heat onto that piece and then a little heat onto my wire that's already soldered, and I get a nice strong bond. Yeah, that's a pretty good bond. It's holding. Okay, so that's one. Now I'm going to get the other one. I usually look for the short wire because I'm going to use the other piece to bring in my component that I'm going to bring in. So now I'm going to solder this wire the same way. I heat up the part, I just touch it, the solder starts to flow. I give it a little smear so that it spreads out evenly. My eyes stay focused long enough. Give it a little blow to cure it, and we're on. Okay. The switch is wired, and we know that. A couple of ways of testing that. I'll show you a fun way to test to see if the switch is wired. One of the fun ways is with a light bulb, which is always fun, where I take the one wire and hook it to another wire that's on here. It's way over here, you probably can't see it, but anyway, I have this light bulb. I'll drag it over if I can. There it is in my little makeshift studio. Okay. Now I take another wire off of the switch and I touch it to the light, to the battery. I have a 12-volt, a little tiny battery. Now I just touch the light. I touch the switch, and that means the light comes on and off. So if I can do that really fast, that simulates what I want to have happen to my electrical circuit, and what that tells me is my wiring and my soldering is complete and good. Okay? So that's how you would test You always want to try to test subsystem or sub-circuits when you can, and make sure you're not putting together something that could have a cold joint or a broken joint and cause trouble. The next thing we want to do is protect that, and I have this tubing. It's called shrink tubing, and it's a small tube, and you cut it just enough to cover the joint area, and you don't want to waste it. And what's fun about it is when you add a little heat to it, it shrinks, and then it will protect the circuit, the component and the joint, from becoming shortened out on something else. See that? That slides right down on it, if you could see it, if I get it focused properly. Maybe I'm too close, I don't know. Try that. Here we go. Get this down there and see that go boop. And if I'm lucky, and I'm not, I will be, it just hides all of the contacts from everything. And then another fun thing you can do, you clean some of the solder off your iron, and you can use your soldering iron to shrink it. And what you'll see as I run this soldering iron over, the sides will smoke a little bit, but they'll also get tight around the wire, and that will make this tubing stick to that area so that it won't slide off and come away. So now my wires are connected and they're insulated, so they're protected. When I put them inside the engine, nothing can happen. Now what I have to do is I'm going to have to build a little spacer. I need to raise my limit switch up just a little bit. And what I'm going to do is put some foam tape on the bottom of my pad and then screw it down and test that out. So I'll get back to you when I get that done. Okay, so now you can see I've mounted the switch on the engine, and I've got my little foam pad, and I've got my angle of the thing of my cam is pretty close to the center line, which is where I wanted it. And now I'm going to mount the cam itself, and we're going to rotate this and test this to make sure that's working properly. Okay, here's another test. We're in on my test fixture. I've got the battery and the light again, but now I'm using the cam to actually rotate. I'm rotating the motor, and I'm using the cam to actuate the switch. And what I need to make sure is that I have a good strong light signal out every cam lobe. That's lobe number 3, and I'm going in the counterclockwise direction. So there's lobe 4. Everything's normal. Now what I'm going to do is go the other direction and make sure that the lobes operate the same. They really should. This is the easier direction. The harder direction is actually coming up. But there's 3. Here comes the screw. We count that as the top, so there's 4. And let's just make sure, okay, there we go. So we have 4 good contacts of the cam to the switch, and the switch turning the light on. So we now have a concrete knowledge of a strong signal. There's no reason why the rest of our circuits shouldn't perform the way they're supposed to. Now we're going to go ahead and mount the smoke and the smoke motor and the chuff switch. Well, I've been doing some cheating. I've got the circuit board. I've put in some balsa wood to give me a platform. I've put my fan assembly and my smoke assembly back on, and I've wired up the fan motor. It plugs into here, and now I'm working on my wiring for this piece. I've got this piece here. Got to make sure that that lead doesn't get in contact with the frame, so I may have to do some bending. We'll figure that out, make sure we're okay. Got to make sure this doesn't stick up too high. I think it's okay. I'm going to tack it down maybe and then do a test fit, but I got to get some of the wiring figured out between the board, the fan chuff, where the chuff is here, and we're going to have to do some circuits. See, what they suggest is you put the fan chuff in with the board, or you put the board and the fan chuff in with the motor. I'm not doing that at all. I'm taking this board and putting it over here. So these 3 connections and the reed switch are all here. So I've got to kind of come up with my own diagram to figure out how to do that. That's going to take a few minutes. So I'm going to go back and work on my diagramming, and then I'll start a new video to show you where this thing goes and see how far I can get today.